Want to know how to get more from your garden? It can be frustrating if you put all your plants in and you don't get great harvests. I'm going to be getting ready for my fall garden, and I'm going to show you 5 tips to kickstart your garden so that you get the increased yields and production that you're hoping for. Step number 1 is going to be getting rid of the old vegetation and any weeds that have popped up over summer. Now, I clearly grow year-round. This is my summer vegetable garden, and it is still producing. I'm going to be slowly moving through my garden beds as things fade out and finish production. So you can kind of use this as a rolling target, or you can just clear things all at once, clean state, and get ready for fall. As you're clearing the old vegetation, don't just get rid of it. As long as it hasn't gone to seed, it's ideal for you to allow it to lay in place on the garden beds and start decomposing. When you do that, it's adding nutrients back into the soil, and it's also protecting the soil surface from the intense sun that we still have here in Florida heading into our early fall planting. If your garden got overrun with weeds over the summer months, whether you weren't gardening or you traveled and things just got out of hand, it's really important to take the time now to try to remove any and all weeds possible to make things as productive as they can be for you in the fall. By doing the hard work now, you're going to allow the plants that you do want to grow in the beds to have adequate access to nutrients and water, and you won't have that constant hassle and maintenance going into the fall season. To get rid of the weeds in your garden, what you want to do is be really, really thorough. Don't just pull them up from the ground or cut them off at soil level. You want to try to get the roots and everything out as best as possible. And then wait 2 weeks, allow things to get wet, whether it be from rainfall or you irrigating the garden, and it will reseed. Any of the seeds that are in the garden weed-wise will regrow. That's your opportunity to go through and clear it one more time so that you've gotten rid of as much of it as possible heading into your fall garden. Step number 2 is doing any sort of maintenance that your garden needs while the beds are cleared. Now, granted, I am still in summer planting season, but I need to get this info out to all of you ahead of time while you guys are working in your garden just like I am. So, in between the lull, in between our summer and our fall season, when the beds are cleared, now is your best time to get in there and do any sort of maintenance or checkup that you need in your garden. Look over your garden beds. Make sure you don't have any rotting wood that needs to be replaced. Make sure that you don't have any rust coming through, that the casters on your container gardens are still moving and shifting how they need. This is also a great time if you have any sort of automated watering system, whether it be drip irrigation or sprinkler, whatever the case is. Now is an ideal time to check over all of your watering systems. Once things start growing in your fall garden, you're either going to have to take out plants, potentially damage plants, or have a really hard time getting in there to patch anything or make repairs. I don't have much as far as garden maintenance. I have very high quality, very durable galvanized metal beds. That means I don't have to worry about insect damage and rot in my garden beds. It's pretty sweet setup. If you do need to upgrade or change out any of your garden beds, I am an affiliate with Hopkins Homestead, which these beds are. So if you'd like to upgrade or replace anything that does need repair, you can use the link below and the code URBANHARVEST for 5% off your entire order. Step number 3 to getting your beds ready for planting are to top off and add in some more nutrients and fertilizer into your system. Now, it is totally normal for the soil to kind of settle and for the plants that are growing there to use the nutrients that they need throughout the growing season. So even if your soil looks nice or fresh, you're still going to need to replace those nutrients that have been lost throughout the previous growing season for your plants to thrive heading into the next one. Plants are essentially eating your soil, and so if you aren't continuously feeding that system something, your plants are not going to produce the way that you expect. So if your garden beds, whether they be containers or raised beds, have settled, now is the time to top off with compost, ideally if you have it. If not, bringing in bagged soil if you're working in a small container garden, potentially getting a half yard of bulk soil if you're working in a larger garden planting area. You need to raise that soil level up so that the plants have plenty of room to send their roots in. The other part to that puzzle is the nutrients, the food that feeds not only the soil life, but also the plants. So if you added compost, that is a great start, and it may be all you need. But especially if you're working with any sort of bulk soil or lower quality bagged soil, you're going to need to add nutrients in addition to that soil. This can come in the form of worm castings, which is my always number one go-to recommendation for any sort of soil amendments. You can also add things like kelp meal, azomite, green sand, coconut coir, bone meal. All of these things add something different to the soil. I kind of like to treat this as grandma's soup pot. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. The more different things you can throw into the soil, the more robust and well-rounded that soil is going to be. Step number 4 is to kickstart your soil ecosystem. Okay, 30-second, super simplistic biology lesson. In the soil, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands and billions of microscopic organisms living in our soil. We can't see them, but they're there. They help to feed the plants what they need. Without that soil ecosystem, the plants cannot produce as well as they can if that system is intact. So going back to step number 3, I had said that my 2 favorite things to add to the soil are compost and worm castings. That's because they put all of that microscopic living stuff into the soil. But what about those people who don't have a lot of compost to add to their garden beds? They're just getting started and their compost isn't ready yet. They don't have an interest in having a worm bin. How do you kickstart your soil ecosystem? I'm excited to say that I now have found a good, viable alternative to compost and worm castings if yours are not ready yet, or if you do not have the interest or space to do so yourself. Holganix is basically all of those good microscopic organisms in liquid form. They have created a slurry of over 800 different soil organisms that you can use to put into your garden and kickstart that soil ecosystem. All you do is use a hose and sprayer and put it on the garden beds, and it will put all of those good guys into your soil for you. I wanted to make sure that even though I understood the biology and the background and the concept, that it actually worked. So I split the yard in half, front to back, treated half of it with the Holganix 800 and the other half without. Garden beds, fruit trees, the whole shebang. And I noticed a dramatic and distinct difference. My black pepper that was kind of doing okay took off, new growth, blooms. My squash, it just exploded in blooms. I saw healthier new growth and less disease on my tomatillos that were a little bit stressed over summer. I noticed a distinct and dramatic difference with and without because I treated with the Bio 800. Step number 5 is pretty straightforward, but very often overlooked, and it is to actually plan out your garden. When we just throw things in the ground or don't really go in with a set plan, sure, things will grow, but you are not going to be optimizing for the highest yield and squeezing as many plants in as you can. So take 30 minutes, an hour, and plan out your garden. Make a list of all the veggies you want to grow. Narrow it down to maybe what takes the less space or produces the longest or is the easiest to grow, and put them all arranged in your garden beds so that when you walk out into the garden to do your fall planting, you know how many plants of each you need to get. It helps with seed starting and everything else. If you go in with a plan, you are going to see much higher yields and better results in the garden. It also gives you the opportunity to actually figure out what's growing this season. Here in Florida, we're flip-flopped. We are not the typical growing season. Our tomato season is heading into fall through winter and spring, not summer like most of the country. Obviously, I have a ton of resources to get you started for that. I have a what to plant when cheat sheet. We do fall garden planning classes. I do regular posts on social media about what's coming up for that season. I have a curated collection of seeds that are all for growing here in Florida, and every single one of them gives advice on when to plant them for North, Central, and South Florida. So tons of resources to check out on my website if you're trying to figure out how to optimize your garden plan and really make the most of what you've got. The 5 tips we just covered to kickstart your garden for the next season will really set you up for success so that everything else after that is smooth sailing. If you want to know what my favorite crops are to plant heading into the fall season, make sure to check out this video next.